Hello guys, 101 days ago I started my GiveIt100 project called writing music. I've learned many things in that time and some of those things might surprise you. I've made a list of 10 things I've learned while doing this project. Let's start with number 1. 1. I learned basic recording technique. I've experimented with several different microphone positions for the acoustic guitar, but also for recording things such as my electric guitar amp or my bass amp, or my voice for that matter. The placement of the microphone is incredibly important when it comes to the producing stage. It's better to get the sound right in the recording phase than it is to fix it in the mix. For instance, if you want a rhythm guitar in your song, but mostly it's high frequencies, you adjust the microphone position so that you pick up less lower frequencies. 2. I've learned how to deal with recording anxiety. I've always been incredibly afraid of recording myself. As soon as I'd press the record button, I would start making a lot of mistakes until I got so frustrated I'd give up. I still make mistakes during recording, and it usually takes several takes to get it right, but I've learned how to cope with it much better. I cope with recording anxiety by doing 2 things. I practice slowly, and when I play, I focus on the music. By practicing slowly, I am more aware of and more careful about how I play. That way I'm also much more in conscious control of my muscles, which helps with building muscle memory. Once I start recording, I do my best to focus only on the music and on the metronome if there's one. So I only focus on things like what chord I'm playing now, what chord I'll be playing next, the melody I'm playing, and so on. And that makes playing music a lot more engaging and a very active process. And it basically leaves no room for anxiety. Also, before starting this project, I actually primarily used virtual instruments to make my music. This was also due to my recording anxiety. I'm glad that that's pretty much over now. 3. I've learned more about production technique. Almost every piece of audio I released was mixed. That means that I didn't just record a bunch of tracks and rendered it to an MP3. No, I recorded a bunch of tracks, worked on each track so that they worked together nicely by doing some equalization and compression and all that, and made a mix that sounded good or good enough, and only then I would render it to an MP3. I've been doing this for a while already, even before I started this GiveIt100 project, but I feel like I was able to sharpen my skills some more, especially when it comes to making a mix that sounds good with real instruments, as opposed to virtual ones. 4. I've become familiar with playing the melodica, the recorder, the banjo, and the mandolin. I've owned these instruments for a while now, but I never really got to learning them. I'm still not very good at these instruments, but this project gave me some really good opportunities to try using them and to learn about them some more. I actually only started learning the recorder about halfway into the project, so I think I picked that instrument up pretty rapidly. 5. I've learned to love my fretless bass guitar. I've always loved the sound of a fretless bass guitar. What I didn't love, however, was that you need to be a lot more precise if you want to play it properly. Since it's a fretless instrument, the placement of the fingers becomes incredibly important. If you're off, the note will sound flat or sharp. That, together with my recording anxiety, made it that I didn't really like using that instrument, even though I love the way it sounds. I used the GiveIt100 project to also learn how to play the fretless bass better. And as I kept using it more and more, it has slowly become my go-to bass guitar. I much prefer it over my fretted bass now. 6. I've learned how to play more consistently in general. Previously, I didn't do a lot of recording, so I could get away with my sloppy playing. However, if you want to record something of decent quality, playing at a consistent skill level becomes very important. This becomes even more important when you're recording an arrangement for multiple instruments. This initially made my recording anxiety worse, but when I learned how to cope with it by focusing on the music itself, my playing also became more consistent. 7. I've learned that being creative means working really hard. I've often been holding myself back by waiting for inspiration to come to me. If only I were more creative or as talented as the big artists, I would wish. As if, that's an innate talent you're born with. However, I've learned that this really isn't the case and that being creative is a skill you can learn. Moreover, you have to treat it like a job. That's actually advice that Julian Lage, one of my favorite guitarists, gave to me personally. I met him a few years ago at the North Sea Jazz Festival and asked him about where musicians like him got their inspiration and ideas from. He then told me that in order to create more music, you have to come back to it every day. Just like you would show up at your job every day, even though sometimes you wouldn't really feel like going. It wasn't really until now that advice really clicked with me, and it's incredibly liberating. In a way, I've cut loose from the idea that I need to be in the right mood or feel inspired in order to create. Sometimes I'll have a bad day, sure, but at least I did my part. That's what counts, and it's the only way to become better. Work, even if you don't feel like it. 8. I've learned that inspiration follows action, not the other way around. This hooks very nicely into my previous point. Like I said, I've learned that I don't have to be inspired in order to create music. I can always start writing music. Previously, I would wait until I had a good idea, and only then would I make an attempt at writing music. In other words, I was waiting for inspiration to come to me. And I don't know about you, but that approach didn't really work very well for me. Not only that, but I would start feeling really bad about myself. However, now that I've learned that I can start writing music anytime I want, despite of how I feel, I've also found that very often I'd get inspired along the way. This has been consistently happening to me throughout the whole project, and I found that this is true with a lot of other things as well. I have a tendency to procrastinate, but interestingly, it's usually the starting part that's actually the worst. Once you get past that part, it usually becomes a lot easier. More importantly, once you get engaged in the process, ideas start popping up in your brain, often based on stuff you just did. So don't wait until inspiration comes to you. Take action first and inspiration will follow. 9. I've learned to be alright with uncomfortableness. As a musician or an artist in general, it's pretty tough to create something new on a consistent basis, and often you don't know if you're going to succeed or not. Many days have gone by with me worrying about whether or not I was going to be able to create something new this time around. And during my GiveIt100 project, I usually started the day having no idea what I would create. And that's kind of scary, especially if you know you have a deadline. That fear of not knowing if today was going to be a success or not often kept me from recording or even picking up an instrument at all. I learned that this uncomfortableness is normal and nothing worth worrying about. I still get that feeling every time I want to create something new, but I now know that it's alright to have those feelings. And more importantly, I can cope with them much better now. Instead of worrying about it and basically wasting time and energy, I approach it much more playfully. Just play around or create something new based on previous material. And whatever you do, don't fall into the trap of not doing anything today. It's better to have tried and failed than to have not done anything at all. And if today you didn't produce anything significant, that's okay. You did your part and you can try again tomorrow. 10. I'm not afraid of making music anymore. All this together has led to me not being afraid of making music anymore. I know that sounds really silly because I'm a musician, right? So how can I be afraid of making music? That is mostly due to the idea that I needed to be inspired to create music, because of the uncomfortableness of not having any ideas to work with. Not only that, but the realization that being creative essentially means working really hard is incredibly liberating. That and all the other lessons combined made it so that making music and getting better at that is merely a matter of putting time and energy into it on a consistent basis. When I put it like that, it sounds incredibly logical, but often that is clouded by a bunch of irrational fears and false ideas, which was the case with me. Luckily, working on this project on a daily basis has shown me otherwise. So as you can see, even though my project was called Writing Music, there was a lot more to the project. It has been incredibly educational and insightful, and I'm glad that I decided to do this. I'm not going to release daily videos anymore. However, I do want to try my hand at doing a weekly music vlog. I've gotten so used to working on music every day now that I don't want to stop. Producing a video every day was a bit troublesome though, so I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore. So be sure to keep an eye out for a music vlog later this week.